till I'm disappointed. We are ready to go. Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all my online participants as well. We're continuing our mental health seminar series, and this one actually was inspired from the last one. If you missed the last one with passive aggressiveness, actually this was the culmination of what happened from the last time. So hold on, let me get the echo off just a little bit. There you go, exactly. Okay. All right. So continuing here, emotions and feelings. As I was creating this topic, I had another friend of mine actually literally said to me, I don't understand the difference. He said, I didn't even know there is a difference. I said, well, don't worry, he lives in another state. I said, well, watch today, and then you would actually know the difference. Okay, let me see, make sure this one. Oh, it's not. Okay, so here is my medical disclaimer. All content in this presentation is for informational purposes only and is not intended to substitute professional medical advice or should not be relied on as health or personal advice. Always seek the guidance of your doctor or other qualified health professional with any questions regarding your health or your medical condition. Never disregard the advice of a medical professional or delay in seeking it because of something discussed in this presentation. If you think you have a medical emergency, call your doctor, go to the nearest hospital emergency department, or call the emergency services immediately. If you rely on any information provided you do solely at your own risk. All right, I always like to do surveys because the purpose of surveys is because I'm trying to trigger your thoughts on as we have each discussion. So this survey will ask you questions about your experience with feelings or emotions. The following statements describe how people deal with unpleasant, pleasant feelings. Please rate the intent to which each statement applies or does not apply to you. If you're unsure, choose the answer that applies most to you. Do not leave out any statements. There is no right or wrong answers. So the scale goes like this. If you rate the following questions 1 through 6, 1 is strongly agree, 2 disagree, 3 somewhat disagree, 4 somewhat agree, 5 agree, 6 strongly agree. And you can just take the tally up in your head. If you don't, it's not where you have to. But if you want to write it down, that's fine. But this is the challenge. So if you're ready, let's begin. Number 1, I tried to bottle up unpleasant feelings. Sister Jeanette, can you turn lapel 2 down for me? Can we get the echo a little bit? There you go. Thank you, ma'am. All right. Number 2.
Excuse me, was disagree at 5?
All right. I'm gonna go back for you so you see it. 1 is strongly agree. One is strongly disagree. 2 is disagree. 3 is somewhat disagree. 4 somewhat agree. 5 agree. 6 strongly agree. Okay. Got it. Okay, that's all right. We work with you. All right. Question 1 repeats again. I try to bottle up unpleasant feelings. Question 2. I let unpleasant feelings happen. Question 3. I stand behind my unpleasant feelings. Question 4. I fight against my unpleasant feelings. Question 5. I permit myself to experience unpleasant feelings. Question 6. I try to push aside unpleasant feelings. Question 7. I usually allow myself to accept unpleasant feelings. Question 8. I believe that unpleasant feelings are justified and important. Question 9. I try to suppress my unpleasant feelings as much as possible. Question 10. I find it bad to experience unpleasant feelings. Now, if you have any questions in between them, stop me. So if I need to explain further, I'll be more than glad to. Oops, too fast here. Question 11. I can accept unpleasant feelings. Question 12. I try to resist unpleasant feelings as much as I can. Question 13. I allow myself to show unpleasant feelings. Now, let's look at the scoring here. If you average, if you accept unpleasant feelings, you should have averaged between the 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. That should have been your average. If you take all the numbers that you have with the questions, divide them up by 2, that should be your average. Okay, now if you reject unpleasant feelings, your average should have been between 1, 4, 6, 9, 10, and 12. So if you see that's a difficulty in your life, we'll expound on it further, okay? But again, this is the ideal so you can kind of see what you're working with. Okay, now, let's get into some pleasant feelings. Question number one. I've gotten used to suppressing pleasant feelings. Question, yes, oh, you got a question? Okay. Question 2, I accept pleasant feelings. Question 3, I try not to feel pleasant feelings completely. Question 4, pleasant feelings are only for shallow people. Question 5, pleasant feelings come naturally to me. Question 6, I can relate well to pleasant feelings. Question 7, to be guided by pleasant feelings often has negative consequences. Question 8, pleasant feelings are a normal part of me. Question 9, I try to curb pleasant feelings. Question 10, pleasant feelings often lead to difficulties. Question 11, allow myself to perceive pleasant feelings. Question 12, I block out pleasant feelings. Now, here's if you have a good process of expressing or accepting pleasant feelings, your average should have been between 2, 5, 6, 8, and 11. Now, you have a hard time or you just reject it altogether, your average should have been 1, 3, 5, 4, 7, 9, 10, and 12. So you say, what do all these numbers mean? But this is the idea because I like to trigger your thoughts. Because see, as we get into this presentation, I'm going to clearly define what is the difference between emotions and feelings. Okay? So, moving forward here. Now, what does the Bible say about emotions and feelings? You know, the Bible has a plethora of things to say, whether you realize or not. I just picked a couple of caveats so you can see. Psalm 37:4, delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Proverbs 14:30, a sound heart is the life of the flesh, but envy the rottenness of the bones. Now, we're going to pick this one apart. I'm going to see if you really understand this one. Proverbs 22:17 through 19. Bow down thy ear, hear the words of the wise, and apply thy heart unto my knowledge. For it's a pleasant thing if thou keep them within thee. They shall withal be fitted in thy lips, that thy trust may be in the Lord. I have made known to thee this day, even to thee. I know everybody looking like, whoa, that's kind of deep, isn't it? But think about it. Let's look at it text by text. Bow down in your ear. What does that mean? Listen. Hear the words of the wise. Who's the wisest? Yeah, but who wrote it? But what? Guess what? He was so wise. Why he had to go through all what he went through? Because he did not choose what? He did not listen. But as he got older, you read Ecclesiastes, yes. But he had to go through all what he had to go through. Then when he got down to in Ecclesiastes 12, it tells you all the answers. But he had done been through all the idolatry he done been through. But if he just would have listened, and that's why he's telling us to listen. Hear the words of the wise. Apply thy heart unto the knowledge. In other words, when something is said to you, listen to it. Apply it. It may actually work. Okay? For it is a pleasant thing if thou keep them within thee. In other words, keep it in here. Also, when in this situation, he's also talking about your feelings and emotions too. They shall withal be fitted thy lips. In other words, you will know what to say, that thy trust may be in the Lord. I have known thee this day, even to thee. Ain't that deep? I had to pick that one apart because I wanted you to understand the concept, what the wisest man was saying, where he went wrong at. So we can learn the lesson from that. And the last one, James 1:20. For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. So you doing something bad, eventually it's going to show who you are, okay? Think about that. All right. Any questions on that so far? Good. All right. Many people agree that it's healthy to be in touch with your feelings. Whether they regularly do so is a different matter. Despite the words being used interchangeably, emotions and feelings are two different but connected phenomena. Emotions originate as sensations in the body. Feelings are influenced by our emotions, but are generated from our mental thoughts. Okay? Let me read that again. Emotions originate by sensations in the body. Feelings are influenced by our emotions, but are generated from our mental thoughts. So if you're thinking a certain way, you're going to behave a certain way. The reason why you're behaving a certain way is you're thinking a certain way. Does that kind of make sense a little bit? Okay, you said no. I said no. Somebody said no? Okay. I can explain it to you, but it's simple. It's the fact, have you ever heard of saying you are what you eat? You are who you are by how you behave. How you behave is a direct result of what is going through your mind. And as we finish this presentation, I'm clearly going to get you to understand the difference between those two. Let's look at this example. You notice the emotion of discomfort while at a function as your stomach clenches and breathing gets constricted. Then your mind labels that as a feeling awkward because perhaps you don't know many people there, or you just saw an ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend. Yet another person with those same emotional bodily sensations, however, might label the experience as exciting because they get to meet new people or see their ex again. Now, here's the thing I want you to understand about people. I could take every one of you in here and line you up against this wall and give you the same emotion. I'm going to get how many people? 1, 2, 3. I'm going to get all different reactions. We say, well, why is that? A, you're different people. So that's why I will get different reactions. Some people are like, man, I don't. Some are like, what? Put them up. We about to get down. Okay, but that's because we are different people. Now, what is an emotion? Strap yourself in here. This might be something mind-blowing here, but I'm going to explain it to you. What is an emotion? Emotions are the biological and chemical reactions in our bodies and in response to an internal or external trigger. These reactions happen on a very basic level that can be completely unconscious. We notice our emotions through the physical sensations that accompany them, such as sweating, muscle tightness, or a racing heartbeat. Psychologists believe that certain emotional responses are basic and automatic, while others can be learned or conditioned through repeated experiences. For example, our initial reaction to a dog may be to smile and laugh, but after getting bit by a dog, you may learn the emotional response of fear in response of being bit. This is called classical conditioning. Okay, if you really want to, I'm not going to get into the Pablo, because Pablo actually did an actual study, but if you want to look up, it's called classical conditioning. The psychologist Pablo, he actually did dog, and he trained the dog that when the dog heard the bell, and he food, but then he got to the point where the dog would just hear the bell, the dog would saliva because he knew the food was coming. And so what happened was over time he realized that we are people that can be trained that same way. That I can condition you to make you feel any way I want to if I know the right points of conditioning. And I use this example all the time. I could say, Jonathan, man, you come to church for a whole month, I'm gonna give you $1,000.
Is that Virginia?
I said, for example. So he says, hey, man, he'll beat me to church, okay? And so after the end of the month, Jonathan comes to me, hey, man, you know, man, I've been here a long time, what case would be. And I said, oops, oh, man, I'm so sorry, man, I can't do that. He's going to feel a certain kind of way, isn't he? He's going to think of me of a certain kind of way, right? He may say some things that might be certain of me, but that is where we have to be mindful of that. If I know how to manipulate your feelings, I can control you. So now, it is the biological and chemical reactions to things that happen into your environment. So that's why you may feel a certain way, because of the emotional things that's going on. And I'm gonna define feelings in a minute, but I want you to understand emotion is biological, it is chemical, it is a reaction to things, the stimuli around you. That is the emotion. And we're gonna get into it a few, but there are some basic emotions people deal with. And everything else is kind of like, okay, I'm not gonna jump ahead of myself, but basically what I'm saying to you is that it's like math. If you can't do algebra or trigonometry, you don't know how to multiply, add, divide, and subtract, right? Emotions are the same way. You have to know the root of them. Then once you know the root of emotions, everything else you go through, that's just your feelings, okay? And now some of you, I know you young kids probably say, oh, you'll be all in your feelings, okay? So I'm gonna explain all that in a minute too. But I want us to just clearly understand what the emotions is. It's the biological and the chemical reaction that happen to whatever triggers in your environment. So we kind of clear on that? All right. Now, here's an example of an emotion. According to psychologist Paul Ekman, we have 6 basic emotions: happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, surprise. Everything else triggers out from that, okay? But these are basically the 6 emotions that most people deal with. And most people deal with number 5 all wrong sometimes. Everybody say, well, anger, which is a whole nother subject, trust me. But most people wind up dealing with that wrong because, A, the perception of it, and also, too, there are people that believe that I shouldn't get angry. It's not normal to be angry. But anger is a regular human emotion. Just like any other emotion, out of these other 5 here that you deal with, it is an emotion. It is, yes, ma'am. Hold on, can we help me out, can we get the mic, because I want everybody to hear your comment.
Whose comment?
This young lady right here.
So the previous slide said that emotions are biological and chemical responses or reactions. So are you saying that these, happiness, sadness, fear, these are biological chemical reactions?
Yeah, they are the basis. So for example, you drove here today, right?
Yes.
So say you go outside right now and you go outside and your tire is flat. Wouldn't you be upset?
I would probably.
Yeah, but everything has a root from it. But you probably be a little disgusted as well. Like, I drove all the way over here, and I was having a good time in the Lord, and my tire flat.
But how is that a biological, chemical reaction? Because
you are going to experience that emotion. Anger is an emotion. You're going to be disappointed. That's a byproduct of it. Okay, let me explain it to you. Do you know that when you become angry, science has proven that your immune system goes down in 24 hours?
Right, but
so it's a biological.
Well, I understand it has biological implications, but I thought the previous slide said that emotions are a biological response.
It is. Because if your tires are flat and you're trying to go home because you want to do some other things, and then you got to figure out who's going to change my flat tire. I don't know how to change no tire. So I got to ask somebody else. And somebody say, for example, you the last one out here. Everybody else on left.
So how is that I'm a nurse, so
Okay. What happens is it triggers your cortisonal system in your body, it's your autonomic system. You know the autonomic system.
Yeah.
It's gonna trigger that because your plan was when you left here to go home and take a nap or whatever you had planned to do, but that got messed up. So you're gonna react. Your body's gonna actually chemically react.
I understand that. Okay.
No, I want you to be clear because I don't want.
I understand that it causes a reaction, but the slide said that that happiness is the biochemical reaction.
It is. Because all the things I just explained to you, that's what your body's going through when you experience the emotion.
So it's a part of the genes then. Because we're created by a God with emotions, and if God has emotions, automatically it's going to pass over to his children, right?
Yes.
Okay, so God gets angry at times.
Yes.
At times he's happy. Maybe frustrated or disposed by us too. God will experience the same responses. So I would probably have to lean to your side, saying that it's biological because we were created by God who has emotions.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
I might be a little bit off the topic, but according to what the sister just said, I was thinking about grief, and Jesus wept. And, like sometimes we cry, and it's an emotion, and it's okay because Jesus feels our pain and he knows everything. And as we go through our emotions, we can weep because Jesus wept.
Exactly. You just answered your own question. Let me get the young lady right here. Then. Yeah. Right here, young lady right here.
So let me try to explain to you. It's a natural thing that happens to your body, okay? Right. Whatever emotions that you feel, it's a natural response to the circumstances that are around you. That's your emotion, okay?
Yes.
So
the slide should say it's a response.
So
the emotion is a response to biological.
Your feelings are responses. Your emotions are what happens when a certain situation comes about, okay? Your feelings within that emotion comes about after, because you're gonna feel some type of way about the situation, okay? You get your tire slashed, you're angry. That's a natural response. How you respond to that anger is your feelings. That's the difference.
Okay, let's go back to the slide here. Emotions are biological and chemical reactions in our bodies in response to an internal or external trigger. So I gave that example because that triggered something, okay? It's gonna make you feel a certain way because you might have really had plans because man, I've been in church and I've been all day and I really want to just take a little power nap. But I can't do that now, okay? Not until I get home, okay? But that is the whole issue. The issue is that it's just what happens to you, what's the external or external stimuli. And the feelings is how you respond to it, which kind of, we'll get into that more detail. Yes, sir.
Yes, one of the things, and you've touched on both of the areas. I've gathered a lot from doing brain research, how God, Bible-based and all of that. Number 5 is the most dangerous one because it causes what is called brain suspension. Division, this is what is followed by, the most dangerous one because it's followed by a negative reaction. Some are joyous reactions, emotional, positive and negative, but I found it's called brain suspension. And individuals becomes insane or their action, emotional actions causes a person to, well, I didn't intend to do that. That's called a disconnect with divine connection. And I have that in the presentation called brain suspension.
Right.
That's why God commands us to maintain self-control. When a person's brain is disconnected, the suspension, a person's not in control of themselves, and that's what we have to be very mindful of. But some of the others, like sadness is one of them, but it's not long-lived. And we can control that more readily than if we are infused with anger. And surprises can respond to joy, and so on.
Let me get the young lady right here. I want to get her response.
Whenever we're happy, it sends off a chemical, right? Mm-hmm. So the reverse would be the same. If you're sad, angry, or disgusted about something, it's going to send off the opposite reaction. So it would still have to do with your environment, the chemicals that makes up your body, and also biological. I'm going to use a different analogy. Please don't throw me out of the church.
Okay.
But when we make love and we reach that area, our body responds and then we feel happy. So that's both biological and chemical reactions. And so we know we have something in our body known as serotonin. Mm-hmm. When that thing happened, you know that thing.
Yeah, serotonin.
Right. It relaxes the body.
It controls your deposition and mood. Serotonin
exactly. Because even if you were sad, or my husband and I had a disagreement and we did that thing, and so on and so forth. We're happy and we start to hug up and kiss and all of that again. So, I mean, it's just the reverse.
Right. But the piggyback, even what you say of serotonin, it controls your deposition and mood. So if you're feeling a certain way, it's gonna make it whatever. So whatever argument they have, all that disappeared, didn't it? Okay. Yeah. That was the last thing on your mind, right, sir? Okay, let me hold on. Go ahead. While I'm gonna get the mic. I'm gonna get the mic. While you answer that, I'm gonna get the mic for her. Oh, you got it. Okay. Go ahead, man.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I just want to say, out of the 6, number 1 is my priority. I don't let anything take my joy. I can be hurting, but I'm going to control it. It's not going to control me. When I talk to my children, they don't know if I'm sad or happy, because when I speak to them, I'm on the same number 1. And so it helps me health-wise. It helps, like, I don't suffer with high blood pressure and all of those things. Because once we leave number 1, then the other emotions are going to set in and take over. And we cannot let anything take our power away from us. So, okay, if I wake up in the morning, I'm smiling. I go to bed at night, I'm still smiling. Right, sweetie? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
So I'm just trying to understand.
Okay, oh man, that's why I love doing this. Okay, yes, ma'am.
So I'm trying to understand the sister here. And so I really need you to flip back again to see the emotion, the definition for emotion, because certainly I understand that. Okay. All right, so I do understand what Sister was saying, because if you go back to now the 6 emotions, it seems as if what maybe we're understanding is the 6 emotions trigger a biological and a chemical reaction. And maybe that's what the sister, where she's getting caught up, because I do understand that, especially we know it with fear, we know it with anger, we know it with happiness, it causes the body to produce chemicals and hormones. So I think, but the other thing that I also wonder is maybe it's, 6 on one hand and half a dozen on the other? Because, that's what I'm wondering, because I do follow exactly what she's saying. Those 6 do trigger a biological and a chemical trigger in our body, a physical reaction in our body.
But the reaction is not chemical or biological. It's those 6 items that are biological or chemical.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
so I think it's a
Right. Okay, I'm gonna get my sister here to give you more clarity because I can't break it down no more. But I got another slide to make an answer to the question. But I want to hear from this young lady here. Then I got another slide coming. It's gonna break down even simpler. Right.
The feelings cannot. Those 6 items, people take medicine for those all the time.
So let me see if I can explain it a little bit better. When you get scared or you're in an accident, you produce adrenaline. That's a biological response. That's the same thing with all your emotions. Depending on the situation, your body is going to react biologically to it. Okay?
Okay, stop right there. So are you saying which happens first? The happiness and then the emotion and then the biological reaction, or the biological reaction produces the happiness?
The
Depends on the trigger.
So it goes in sync with each other. So one happens, so your body reacts before your mind does, okay? Because you can feel pain after you've been hurt, okay? Sometimes you hit yourself a lot. I've seen a lot of patients that scratch themselves and didn't realize that they did it until they see the scratch and then they feel the pain.
Right, okay, because I need you to answer the question. Does happiness, I know they're cyclic, right? But which comes first? Happiness producing the biologic reaction, which produces more happiness, or the biologic reaction, which produces
The
happiness?
biological response happens first because I can be happy and my reaction to that happiness is my feelings, that I'm feeling the happiness, so I'm going to react to it. So the biological response happens first, and then it triggers the feelings. I can jump for joy. I can run around the parking lot because I'm so happy. Something happened biologically. My body responds to that situation.
Or naturally, we're sitting here, we're happy because we're not sad. We're all in agreement with each other. We're going to have one of those, but it is because of all of those things can be medicated. We give people medicine for those. So we're putting something in our body. If a person is depressed, you give them an antidepressant to raise some chemical reaction in your body to bring you to where you need to be. Maybe the person that is depressed will have the anger.
Yeah, they may have some issue with the dopamine receptors or whatever. Sometimes you may have to do antidepressant to increase the serotonin. Exactly.
Within us that
Right.
creates these.
Right.
The feelings come.
I'm not talking about the feelings, I'm talking about these. What you said is what I agree.
Okay. So let me do this. 'Cause I think this slide will kind of clear up a little bit more. Okay. All right. All these basic emotions are associated with a specific facial expression or can be seen cross-culturally, even among cultural groups that have never experienced Western and European cultures. Although you may wonder if it's possible that the whole of human emotional experience can really be categorized into these 6 emotions, it seems like it can. Other emotions that we talk about are really just combinations or shades of these basic emotions. For example, the emotion of being annoyed is really just anger on a small scale. Grief is a very specific shade of sadness, and so on. So to make it simpler, everything else is rooted off from what all the other emotions are. They're just the springing board to other things to happen. So, yes, ma'am.
Look, y'all gonna pass this little mic back and forth.
Yeah, because y'all messing with my camera woman here. Yes, ma'am.
I was thinking about sadness. The gentleman had mentioned that it's like for a short period, but I don't think that there's no time period on grief, the last sentence. Grief is a very specific shade of sadness and so on. So I'm going through a grieving period right now. My husband just passed on March 14th.
Yeah, you were saying that earlier, right?
So I'm looking at the sadness picture today and just thinking about like how long it would last.
Okay, now, by me being a former clinician, I'm gonna answer your question only from a clinical standpoint. Typically, if it goes over a year, it's a difficulty. You may want to consider seeing someone just briefly to talk about the process. So, particularly by me doing what doing clinical stuff for the last 28 years, if it on average it goes past a year, then that's something you may want to consider. But again, everybody's mindset is totally different. For you, it may be end of May and you fine and you process everything, but it's at your own pace and it's where you decide and you and God work things together. So yeah, exactly. So it's but yeah. So I mean, it could be whatever, but it's day by day, moment by moment. That's the thing I will say to you, and then be encouraging God to have Him to, just like how you said, He's not going to give you any more that you can't bear, and He will actually give you the peace that goes beyond any understanding. So give that to God, and He'll help you with that process.
Here is something very, very, very important. How many thinking styles do we have? How many?
Right.
How many thinking styles do we have?
Okay, I know where you're going, but here's the thing here. Just because you have the different thinking styles doesn't mean that how you process stuff.
No, I'm coming to that.
Yeah, okay. So, I'm trying to figure out where you're going here.
Yes, no, but I'm not going far with this. The 4 thinking styles we have, like the, like the 4 quarters of the universe. We have that same carbon copy right here. 4 thinking styles. We are given the capacity to determine what the outcome will be. You have 4 thinking styles, the 2 hemispheres, and they're divided. Central hemispheres, and then anyway, I'll get to the other one. But we have 4 thinking styles, and within this we function when we understand that how the brain functions, and God gives us this. We can predetermine what the outcome, whether it will be negative emotion or positive emotions, and this, if we are reactive rather than proactive. And we understand this, we can be more proactive rather than reactive and predetermine what the outcome will be. Before, in the midst of crises that we have and face from day to day, we can predetermine what the positive or negative results can be. And dealing with that, again, in the next few weeks, I'll be addressing that if you're here.
Now I'm going to add on to the confusion. Yes, ma'am.
Someone hands up?
Oh, you got it.
I got
it.
one.
Okay.
Okay, so I hear all of it.
Bring it
But
closer to me. Yeah, go ahead.
I hear all of it, but this is the thing. All right, so the way God created us, we got to go back to that.
Okay.
Okay? And then we got to also look at something that He said. He said, don't allow your emotions and your feelings to control. However, He built us a certain way. And so if we go back and think about how He built us with those things. But then it's the reaction of how we operate from those things that He put in us that are a part of who we are. So when we go back and we look at the first part of that, that's where we got to start. And I'll tell you something about science. That's the reason why we have to be careful with scientists. And we got to go back to the creator of the science. Because He said, I'll use the foolish things to confound the wise. And medical science says it's wise. when in actuality it is not. You said something earlier that was really a big catalyst of why right now we have people who would have been great, who are not here, in jail, are somewhere that they should not be. Because they took number 5, and which was anger. And then the word talk about being slow to anger. It's a reason for that. Because that emotion of anger, it costs you. So if we go back, and we can really go back to the beginning of this thing, because that's why whenever I see a scientist or a doctor confess or profess God, I know we're on to something. And the reason for that is because they didn't allow their medical work, what they studied, or what they think they know, to be the forefront, right? So I get where you're coming from, because we're looking at it from a biological thing, but yet it is biological. Because then we have to go back and look at all of those things that make us up first. And why would he tell us? Because his word distinctly says it. Don't let those things be your reason. Don't let those things lead you. Now, I created them in you. So all of those things are created in each and every one of us. The problem is the enemy uses certain things against us. So a person can innately have happiness, but they don't know how to release that and experience it, because those things in their environment, and he's going to talk about this, I'm sure. Yeah.
That's fine.
You see what I'm saying?
I love the dialogue, personally.
Yeah, but see, I'm trying to get there because I'm listening to everybody, and I was like, okay, Lord, how is this? But that's why. Because we're looking at it from one angle versus the other, and we really do have to go back to who created it all and who started it all and why it's so important for us to understand that. And in the body of Christ, we really do have to understand this, because those that are coming, we got to be able to accept them. We got to be able to be in our place so that we can accept them coming from their places. So.
And also, again, and you read in Proverbs 15, a soft answer turneth wrath. Right. So the thing is that God knew that our emotions was going to be a trigger of how we deal with each other and how we really perceive things. And not getting too far off the subject, I tell people all the time, what is an attitude? People say, well, I got an attitude with you. I got whatever the case may be. You know what attitude really is at the end of the day? It's just your mental perception, how you see something. You can have an attitude with me because you may say, well, you may think he's arrogant and cocky and whatever the case may be. But that is your perception of me. But if you don't sit down and have a conversation with me, then you be like, oh man, he cool in the cucumber. He's a nice fella. He all right. But it's your perception of how you see it, which causes some of those other emotions that can figure out. Now, let's add to the confusion. What is a feeling? While an emotion is the biological response to a trigger, the feeling is the conscious evaluation or appraisal of what we are experiencing. So, once we have noticed the physical experience of the emotion, the mental sensations that arise are known as the feeling. These feelings are how we make sense of the emotion. Like emotions, feelings are a composite of our experiences and include factors like our behavior, our culture, and any traumatic experience we had. Questions? Because you're looking at me like...
No, completely agree.
Okay.
Emotion is the biological response.
The response.
Right.
Okay.
The response is not emotion, which was what the previous slide said. The previous slide said emotion is the response, or it said
it's the biological, but
it's the biological
but it was
reaction.
a trigger.
But this says that the emotion is the biological response. I totally
Got
agree.
it.
It's total. The slides say different things, but I agree.
Yeah, but like everybody said, but I was just trying to make it as simple. But it like you said, and the young lady, whatever. But it's just what's our stimuli around us. That what makes the difference, really. And then the feelings is what I said. It comes like, okay, cultures. Different cultures respond to things totally different. Okay, I know some of you are from the Caribbean, whatever case may be. If you do certain things, whatever in their culture, it's on. Like, hey, something's gonna happen to you. Okay, versus in our culture, somehow we just blow it off like, hey, this is par for the course. It's just how whatever. But our behavior and the thoughts, that's the thing we have to concentrate on more. Because you have the stimuli that triggers something. If you don't understand how you operate as a person, that's how you let the emotion or the disgust or the things, because you don't understand how you operate. So you must learn how you operate as a person. Like, so for example, if somebody just curse you out for no reason, they don't even know you just curse you out. And you be like, okay, I don't even know this person. I'm like, hey, what value that is to that? Versus with somebody who was your best friend that does that, you're gonna take a little bit more feeling of that, because we've been friends for how many years, and all of a sudden for you to come to the left at me like that? So, we clear on that so far. So we got it. We got the emotion and we got the feeling now. Now we say, okay, now let's look at the example of a feeling. Using the example of a feeling annoyed is a basic emotion of anger that we label as being annoyed because someone else did something that is making us feel a little bit angry. Depending on our experiences, we may label this feeling in a lot of different ways. For example, if our culture does not condone being angry at an authority figure, we may be more likely to label it as being annoyed or confused or uncomfortable. Whatever it is, understanding the feeling and how we label our emotion can help us to develop self-regulation skills. So you say, what's self-regulation? That means that sometimes you got to know when to, as the old thing, or when to say something, when not say something, when to back off, and when to leave it alone. Because some things is just not even worth even trying to spend the time with. Some things you may have to do as it relates to your children because you might need to get them straight. Okay, it may be sometimes it may be that it may be in the grocery store and you buy something and the person's being disrespectful to you in the grocery store. Yeah, you might need to say something. Okay, or you might need to go to that person's manager and say, hey, this person did X, Y, Z. So you need to know when to be able to juggle that around. That's the key of when you can label that emotion and then what's the steps I need to be able to challenge that on. Some things you could say to me, I honestly could care less. Now, some things you would have, okay, yeah, then me, you're going to have a conversation. No, we may have to have a sidebar or something, but some things you can say to me, that's like, okay, what else is new? You know?
Most things we should just.
Yeah, seriously, I'm like, I'm the kind of person, you got to do a lot to me. Seriously, because it just ain't too much. So I had nothing. Okay, I done been whatever, what else can you do to me? Besides you're going to try to kill me, then I'm going to have to defend myself. But other than that, you can say what you want to say about me. That's just how I feel. Yes, ma'am.
Well, here's what is very helpful to me, and I strive for this moment by moment. I am empowered. Individualize this. I am empowered from above to what the outcome will be in almost everything by being proactive. I can predetermine what my reaction will be if I'm proactive, and that is, I am empowered. Therefore, I should not allow any adverse situations to rob me of my power, to have to get my power to that situation. And I can depower myself if I'm reactive to this. But if I'm proactive, and that's what the word teaches, being proactive, and then some things is better to wear duck feathers on. If it's negative, I don't get wet. Just let it roll on off. I don't have to react to everything.
Let me get this young lady right here behind you.
Someone.
Yeah, behind you. Can you give her to her? No, right here, young lady right here.
Oh.
With also that experience teaches wisdom. But it also says in the Bible, when I'm a child, I do childish things. But now I'm a man, I put away childish things and do what a man is supposed to do. When you're a child, you experience emotions differently. And I say that in the sense that you're going to react as a child to any and all emotions because you don't know how to put them in perspective as a child, right? We as adults need to recognize and be able to guide our children how to better make sense of their emotions. But if we don't grow as adults emotionally, mentally, and psychologically, we can't do that. So it all comes with experience just the same. And I've noticed that a lot of adults don't learn from other people, period. We don't. And I'm one that you make the mistake, let me learn from your mistake so I can go forward.
That's your object lesson from that.
Right? So it's our duty as adults to learn from each other, to learn from our children, and to also teach each other and our children to do better, be better, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all the alleys. You know, it's better for us. With experience teaches wisdom. So with all of that, that's what I get from that. We need to grow emotionally and mentally to be able to be better and do better and teach better.
Okay. Now let me pose this question. Okay, what's your comment? 'Cause I really want to. Well, I got two comments. Go ahead, and then the young lady here behind you. But I really want to pose this question as the comments here to see if your thinking caps are really on.
So I'm just making sure I'm getting this clear in my mind. Mm-hmm. Emotions we don't control. There is a physical reaction, a chemical reaction that takes place in my body when the emotion of fear occurs. But what I can control is the feeling. And when the Bible talks about self-control, temperance, we must pray to ask the Lord to help us with the feeling. Because, you know, I was thinking when you were talking about emotion, we feel the emotion of anger. The chemicals are released in our bodies. There's that biological response to the emotion. However, someone can choose to laugh. They handle that emotion with a feeling, the feeling of humor. Someone else could feel and respond by fighting. So it is, the emotions are basic in all of us. When we feel happiness, serotonin is released in all of us, right? But the way we respond to it, the feeling varies from person to person. And that's what we have to pray God to give us self-control over.
Good point. Excellent. Yes, ma'am. Then I'm really going to pose this question here, and then we're going to close everything down. Go ahead with your question.
Okay. One thing I was going to ask or say was like, say for instance, you have angst. You as an individual have some angst.
There you go.
You as an individual. And you go somewhere and you've already got this, you already feel some kind of way already, right? And someone approaches you. How you respond, why is that? Why are you responding the way you're responding? It could be negative. Now, I'm sitting next to you. I hear and see exactly what just happened. But you already felt, or you already internalized a certain kind of way, right? You emotionally already had a certain kind of way that you were feeling. And now you're expressing that thing onto the person who you're talking to. not because that person did something, really not even what they said, because you may not have really even heard or were listening to what they said to you, but because of where you were already emotionally, where you were, you responded negatively. And so now people see you a certain way. And they see you a certain way all because of where you were in your emotional state that came across as something to the other person. You see what I'm saying? So environment is something real too, because you said something earlier about when I was a child. So we have some adults who are still children.
You said it.
I mean, I'm not trying to be funny when I
Right,
say
but you
that, but
said it.
really, we got
You
some
said it.
adults that are still children, right? They're still responding that way because they're still in their emotional states, right? And so it's coming out in their feelings. Now everybody else is paying for it.
Some of it is a flight or
In the
Fight or flight.
Right.
Exactly.
and based on previous experience.
Correct. That's it.
In previous experiences.
That's
correct.
exactly right.
So that leads into my next question I'm getting ready to ask. So, what is the difference between a response and a reaction?
There's a broad, in my view, there's a broad distinction between the two. Reaction, well, the response can be negative. The response can be silence. But the reaction,
But that's not defining what I just questioned now.
again,
What is the definition of the difference between a response and a reaction?
A reaction is instant.
Okay, there you go. Now we're getting somewhere.
A reaction is instant. A
Okay.
response is thought about.
Ding, 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 ding. That's exactly what I was looking for.
yes.
When you respond to something as a human being, you have the capacity to think before you say or do something.
Sure.
When you're reacting, you're going straight off your emotions.
Absolutely.
Like, for example, and I'm just saying this for example, and you guys are beautiful people. If I was to walk over to you right now, just haul off and slap you, that's going to be a problem over here. Yes, that's going to be a problem over here, okay? So, exactly. So what I'm saying is that we have the capacity as human beings to think about things before we say them or do them. Now, do we always practice that? No. But I wanted to make that clear because I wanted us to understand the difference between the two, because you have the responsibility as an adult to either do one or the other. Make sense? Does that make sense? Thank you. Because we are what? All of us in here are Homo sapiens. We are human beings. So we have the capacity to think before we say or do something.
Sure.
Even if somebody triggers the emotion.
Yes. That's true.
I can use them. You know what? Well, I don't think you want to go there today. I may have to laugh that off and say, you know what? I'm going to walk away from you because today is not today. Okay? Right. Now, tomorrow's something different. That's why grace only goes from one day, because if it get too, boy, we be in trouble, okay? So that's the point that I'm saying. And I want to pose that question to you guys because I want us to remember as human beings, we have the capacity to think before we say or do something. That is called the response. When you, like you young kids, are in your feelings, is because you are already emotional. And I triggered something that led you to whatever case may be, and then you why your kids do this. How many of y'all had kids that say, "What were you thinking?" Trust me, how many of y'all have said, "Come on," I'm like, "What were you thinking?" And they didn't realize they strictly going off their emotions and their feelings. Okay. Then I say, man, you didn't think that through at all. You know? But that's what happens when kids do as they get older. You know, you try to teach them as parents to not do that and then let them learn. And sometimes they got to learn from their own mistakes. I tell my kids, sometimes you got to feel the burns. Because when you feel the burn, oh, man, I'm not doing that no more. Okay, because you felt the burn. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, go ahead.
Just
Yes,
let me
ma'am.
say this one. I wish you could have seen what my wife and I saw this past week. There were two twins, let me just say this, and I think you would have been gyrated in a positive way by it. The father was well-disciplined, self-controlled, well-controlled, and he taught his two twins. They were about 15, 16. And it was on YouTube. And they went to the school where, as it was, the school was undisciplined they were very segregated. And the two black girls went, and they were so disciplined that because they appeared, it drew an attraction, and the boys began to gather, and there was a leader. And he kept stimulating the others to gyrate them negatively, or they thought negative. But the two young girls, were so disciplined and well-trained by their father. They did not react in any way, day after day, day after day. They didn't give a personal reflection. They just went about their business, in and out of class. And each year, the instigator of this, he was older, maybe late teens, but he was older. And he gathered a fortification about him to support. And this went on for days and weeks, and each time they didn't respond at all, verbally or in any other way. They just went on about their business. And he was agitated by it. I make this short. He was, and his accompanying supporters were so agitated about it, and each time they would accelerate it, determined to get their reaction. So they went, and the girls maintained their cool, complete control, and the class, and they got no support from the teachers to put an end to what other kids, the crowd kept increasing. Mm-hmm. And these girls maintained until eventually the agitator, he crossed the line and got in the face. And the girls didn't change at all. And finally, he decided he was going to get a little physical with it because he was getting a celebration, what he was doing. And once he crossed the line and began to push the girl, and those teenagers, two girls, they reacted, but they reacted with complete control. And when the guy pushed her, then she pushed him back, physically, control. And he began to react, and he charged after her, and she was well trained physically. And she caught his arm and snapped it like that, and he flipped. And that brought about silence by his surrounders, his supporters. And then two twins, they were together, and then another fellow joined in with him, and the two teenage girls, they were well in their strategy, and they flipped both of them on the guys on the ground, and then his supporters began to
dissipate.
Right. And finally, it didn't stop there. Then after that, they started to insist on what they were doing. And the two teenage girls beat those guys up. And they were not out of control. They just reacted after the guys crossed the line repeatedly. And it extended from there to their homes. And the boys were there on the ground when the girls finished with them. And when the guys charged him, they just sidestepped him and flipped him just like that. And it went from there,
right?
How the two guys beat up those boys, and the parents of the boys, bigger, older, were so humiliated, they went to their home, and the father came out. He was well disciplined, and the two daughters by him. And they just stood there and find someone called the policeman.
See, that's a perfect example of self-regulation.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. You had a comment, Ms. Lisa? Okay. All right. So there are hundreds of different words that can be used to describe feelings. These are some examples: amazed, awful, bad, bitter, confident, confused, Creative, fragile, humiliated, hurt, loving, playful, shocked, stressed. Now, we're going to wrap everything up here. Understanding the difference between feelings and emotions. Emotions describe personal experience we label as good or bad, kind of like enjoying a warm cup of coffee or disliking a rainy day. Feelings, on the other hand, refer to the thoughts we have about our feelings and also act as a vehicle for communicating our feelings. For example, a betrayal may trigger sensations of anger, hurt, and sadness. These are emotions and often invoke immediate physical sensation within the body. Our thoughts about the experience, such as thoughts of betrayal, disillusionment, and distrust, shape and define our feelings. So our emotions, that triggers that happens, can define your feelings and can build the experience of how you interact among other people for the rest of your life. Quick thing that you may not know, do you know, I'm just going to throw it out there. What's the age of when a personality of a child is set? Anybody, just give me a number. Okay, Lisa? Okay, I hear you. All right, anybody else want to try? You said, okay, who said, oh, what you said? You said 5? Okay, who said 3? Correct, 3. Do you know the first year of life, you learn 50% what you're going to learn out of your whole life in the first year? The first year of life, you learn 50% of who you're going to be the first year of life. Second year is the other 25%, other 25%. By the time 3 years old, your personality is set. Now, as a parent, what you want to do is that from that time frame, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 15, whatever, you start formulating and getting them to understand what are the things that they need to do to make them better citizens, Christians. But you gotta start from literally the cradle. Just the fact that you may not know. So if you got some grandkids that might be coming on the way somewhere down the line, if you want to start, you start off early.
But some parents and or grandparents are emotionally
unstable. I was helping you out. I know you I kind of figured what you want. You didn't know what quite word to use. I said, let me help my sister out. Unstable. So it doesn't be critical,
mature
right?
enough to be able to pass that along to future generations, which is why you have younger people with more volatile expression of emotions and not being able to control them, and is why you have an unstable society.
Excellent point. Emotions often involve feelings, but are implicitly engaged with the world around you, like the point you bring earlier, okay? They emerge subconsciously in several brain areas, including the subcortical region, the amygdala, and the ventromedial prefrontal cortexes. The stimulus of these areas of the brain causes changes in one's physical and emotional state. The fight or flight response when faced with danger or stress is a basic human emotional response ingrained in each person's genetic code. This emotion became widespread because it has helped humans and other mammals survive as a species. However, the body can have many other emotional responses, including during pleasurable and enjoyable circumstances that people talked about over there, okay? All right, because these inclinations are a neurochemical reaction from a stimulus, they are also considered unconscious and instinctive. Okay? All right. So how are feelings more specific than emotions? Here it is. Here's where the rubber really meets the road. Feelings become more specific than emotion responses and may be also brought up due to our physical reactions. Pain and hunger are a couple of examples of this occurrence. If you are injured, you can feel pain. If you have not eaten during the day, you may feel hunger. In addition, you might feel angry if you're hungry for a long time. Like, man, I ain't nothing all day. I had time. I'm too busy putting this together, whatever the case may be. Me personally, I have to learn to sometimes I have to stop and make myself eat because I'm going so much. It's not like I'm not hungry or whatever, because I'm going so much sometimes that I have to stop and I have to remember, did I eat today? And I was like, man, that's like 3:30. I ain't even ate nothing today. Because I'm like, I had my couple bottles of water and whatever, and I'm like, and I have to remember sometimes that I need to remember to actually eat sometimes. Because I'm just going, doing things and moving. Now, that could be a bad thing, but I try to regulate that, okay? These dispositions are noticed at the conscious level, and according to Antonio Damaso, a professor of neuroscience at the University of Southern California, these inclinations are mental experiences of body states and arise as your brain interprets your subconscious moods. Damaso theorized that feelings arise due to the human brain interpreting emotions, the physical signals of the body reacting to an external stimulus. His primary theory stipulates that the interplay of emotions and feelings is the core of consciousness, and the emotional control processes preserve life while shaping personal and cultural accomplishments. Unlike emotions, feelings are completely conscious. However, not all conscious experiences are necessarily feelings. You may be aware of what you are seeing or hearing without your awareness of a feeling. Although feelings differ slightly from emotions, they do have similarities. Sometimes you can block things out, folks. How many times you might hear your husband before, that did not what you be like, yeah, and you'll be like, I ain't paying it. But look at what he's saying. Okay? And men, we do it too. Because my wife will be like, yeah, I'm listening to every word you say. I'm like, I'm thinking about what I'm going to do. I'm like, okay, let me go ahead and do this and get out of the way. But we can do that and have no feeling. I'm like, she just talking, or he just talking. And I just let him get it all out. And I'm like, yeah. And I go ahead, now you ask me, okay, yeah, then go ahead and do it and get it on out the way. So you see how you have to be mindful of that? You see how important it is when God was talking about relationships with people, or with our spouses or whatever? It's important that we need to tune into the emotions and our feelings. Because that is helpful in a relationship. That helps define a healthy relationship. Now, is it a bad thing to tune something out? It depends on the situation. But, sometimes if you have to tune out to make sure you respond to the person correctly, you may have to tune it out for whatever and let me process it, then come back and address the issue and or behavior, okay? So it's okay that if you need to do that, okay? And sometimes, how many times you may have been working, your supervisor will fuss at you about the same thing you've already done already, they don't even realize you already done it. And the first thing they say, well, I need for you, how do you want to? And you just hand it to them because it was already done. And you know what? That just silence everything. So we have to learn how to be able to respond to people. That will save your emotional so much. That'll save your emotional turmoil. That'll save you from those being angry and all that kind of things. It'll really save you from that. Now, how to determine the difference between feelings and emotions? Your brain may assign meaning to your moods to create a feeling, but it can also do the opposite, depending on experiences you have been exposed to. For example, people who got fear of spiders can be an example. At some point in your life, you may have a negative experience with a spider, causing you to fear them in the future. This innate phobia and emotional state can also be paired with feelings like fear and disgust. Your mood can also affect your behavior, following feelings towards them to persist. You can actively try to avoid spiders or avoid thinking about them to prevent an unwanted emotional response, creating more fear. Similarly, these emotional responses can cause you to pursue a behavior or situation because you expect a positive emotional response. However, moods can often are often temporary, and emotional responses can be persistent. This process can create a cycle of emotions that incite negative feelings, which cause more emotions. Because your emotions and feelings significantly impact your behaviors, they can influence how you can interact with the world, potentially inspiring unhealthy or healthy behaviors. Since they shape your behaviors, becoming aware of these emotions and fully understanding your emotional responses can be beneficial in making changes. So if you notice that you always in the middle of something, you got to start looking at yourself. What are the things that trigger me to always cause me to, I find myself being in an argument with someone? Or I find out I'm about this much away from getting in a fight with somebody. Or if I'm in this point about saying some bad words. I gotta really start looking at myself. And I can't blame everyone else all the time. I gotta take a role of responsibility into that too as well. Because it may be because I'm letting someone push my buttons of anger that I'm reacting. And because I'm reacting, then I find myself in trouble. So take a look from the neck up. Okay? Take a hard look at yourself. Because that could be what's really going on. And that's why you might feel people say, I'm in an emotional turmoil. I'm in an emotional whirlwind. Because these things you need to pay attention to more. These are triggers or signs that you gotta pay attention to more. Now, last part here, self-awareness of your emotions as a vehicle for change. To change your emotional responses, it may be beneficial to work towards a sense of self-awareness. One way to develop an awareness of your emotions is to pay attention to the physical sensations that occur after a stimulus, such as your heartbeat or temperature. So in other words, when somebody make you angry, and you notice you start sweating, you start breathing hard, you start like, or you get that tingly feeling on the inside, that, ooh, my hand will raise up. I need to put the hand down, put the hand down, put the hand down, okay? Those are things you need to pay attention to.
Question?
Yes, ma'am.
But isn't that someone?
Or it could be someone, or it could be you.
No, the thing is we're used to saying something made us this way or caused us to do this. Was it, I'd rather say it's the stimulus.
Yes, your experiences.
But what you were describing here is the response.
Yes.
What you're saying is we're in total control most of the time.
At least we should be.
We
Right.
have, healthy,
Right. But sometimes we have to realize the triggers. See, sometimes we don't even realize the triggers because we get so oblivious to them because it happens so often, so much. Sometimes things in life can become a blur because it's happening so much. Somebody's always making me angry. Somebody's always trying to steal my joy. I'm just saying that. Somebody always making me. I'm always disgusted, or because I might put too much faith in people, and they keep letting me down. So those things you got to pay attention to, but you got to look at the physical cues. Those physical cues based upon the stimuli will tell you exactly what's going on. That's a part of self-awareness. These physical sensations are the only way to measure emotions in studies. For example, pupil dilation through eye tracking, heart with electrocardiogram, or facial expressions can give others an objective measurement of emotions because they are bodily reactions as well as feelings. How many of us really pay attention to social cues from people, besides it's only people we just care about? How many of us pay attention to social cues within others, or we're just only to the people that we just care about? See, most time we blur out everybody else, But the people we close to, we pay attention because I want them to be happy. I want them whatever case it be. We got to pay attention to social cues from everyone that you deal with. From the person to the grocery store, to the person, whatever, because I'm the kind of person, when I go to the grocery store, I don't like go to the whatever unless I have to. I like to talk to people. I'm making my business to go and talk to the person because I want to see how they day going.
But if someone is emotionally unaware, they won't be able to do that. See, I work with people every day. I work with patients. So I have to pay attention to what if they're hurting.
That's your livelihood, exactly.
Right. I have to pay attention if they're hurting, if anything is making them uncomfortable, because I have to check blood pressures. I have to do various things with my patients. So I have to pay attention to that. Other people are not emotionally aware of themselves, so it's a little bit too much to ask them to be emotionally aware of everybody else around them.
It's because I do what I've done. That's why I've always been where I have been. But I grew up in a family that was that too as well. So my family, because we were small, by us being small, we always took care of each other. We looked out for each other. So that just made it easier for me as growing up because my family really, it was small, but it was close-knit. So it made it much easier for me to pay attention to the social cues. And as I went to school and started learning the techniques and whatever, but it just was much easier because I always learned to care about people. And that wasn't, that was just inbred because my parents took the initiative to say, hey, we're gonna do that because you have to learn how to be helpful to others because you never know when people can help you. So that's what makes it easier for me. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when you start looking at it from this perspective that some people don't have that, they don't have that response, or they don't have that attitude, okay? And I say that because it's like the situations that they grew up in. So if we go back to when they were children, and if they didn't get that from the ages of 0 to 3, and then they didn't get it as they grew older, they become introvert, okay? And when they become introvert, what happens with those people that are around them, unless you are very close to them, if they ever let you into their circle, you get that. But if you're not in their circle, you don't get that because of the fact that they feel some kind of way when you try to come into that space because it's a protected space. So they're aware, but they don't necessarily have that you're talking about, that it goes outward. You know what I'm saying?
The response, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna piggyback and I'm gonna take it even one step further. The example you just said, say for example, you grew up hard, you was poor. You might not even know when your next meal was coming. Or say, for example, the person who was raising you winds up getting sick and dies while you still trying to learn how to be a child, learn how to be an adult. And you have to learn how to raise yourself. What do you think happens to that person? That person don't know how to express emotion because nobody never showed them because the person who did express emotion to them was not there. Or if they did, they treated them so bad that they didn't know how to express it. So sometimes you can get in a situation and be in relationships and have a really good relationship, but don't know how to express your emotions to the person because you've been so dense of how. Okay, pick on back. How many of you ever heard the expression that men don't cry?
It's been gone.
Right. Okay. You know that's a bunch of malarkey, right? Okay. So that's what happens. So we live into these worldly stereotypes. And so when somebody whatever to touch our emotion, you be no man, I ain't gonna catch me crying, Jonathan. No man, that ain't me. I don't cry. And so when they get into some real serious or deep, intense relationships, they don't know how to express themselves because whatever they done been through, they tell them, hey, no, man, you ain't a man. You don't cry. You a man.
Yeah, or they express themselves in unhealthy behaviors, because then there's the other side where, he was a young kid who grew up hard. You say, hey, you come up here a certain way, I know, it better be me or him, so, before he get me, I'm gonna have him.
Right.
That's what he was taught.
Exactly. And sometimes it might not even kind of vibe, but because of the experience.
But as you said before, feelings are taught. So we have that innate emotion of those 6 emotions, but feelings towards them are taught. And if the parents were not taught well, they won't know how to pass that on to their own children. I did a psychology class and we went through different serial killers and the different emotions that went into them being who they were. This one specific man was a strangler, and he went into that role after his caretaker died. He was tossed on the side of the road as a child by his own mother and picked up by a passerby who raised him. And the moment she died, he went emotionally unstable. So what he led to do was pick up females, have a relationship with them, and once he was done, he would strangle them and toss them at the side of the road. Emotions are there innate to you, but feelings are taught. And he was one of those examples of not being taught emotions well.
Exactly. That's a perfect example. When you develop an awareness of your emotions and feelings, you can navigate the world around you more freely. You can be able to figure out the causes, make a conscious thought, and act in healthier ways. You can choose to respond, react, or ignore situations that can cause an emotion to arise, potentially leading to a more positive lifestyle. Okay, in conclusion, it might not seem important to understand the difference between feelings and emotions. However, it can be a vital part of your self-knowledge. By understanding how you feel, they can better react to a situation and regulate your feelings. Okay? Now, if you miss any of this, you always can go back online and watch it. Also, if you need to be able to have a copy of the slide, my email information right there, I'd be more than glad. There's no patent on none of this information. I'd be more than glad to send it to you so you can go back and kind of look at it and review it for yourself. But I want to make sure that everybody's mind and heart and thought processes are clear of understanding now the difference between feelings and emotions. Because this is going to be a vital thing of how you have your relationship with God and how you treat your fellow man. That's gonna be a key factor. Because if you don't know how to self-regulate yourself, and some people who may come at you who are maybe learning how to be Christians, and they may say some things that's kind of like, okay, out of context, and then you may take it personally because you think they're attacking you, and they may not really, because they just don't know. And so you have to be in a position to say, hey, you know what? I got to be able to not react to that, respond to that, and provide some education and be supportive. Because in this world that we're coming in, we're going to run across a bunch of people that ain't going to think the same way we think. Okay? Yeah, that too. So, but in the same token, we have to learn how to respond to those things. Yeah, we had that discussion. Yeah, if you want to go back to the church's website, that was one of the first seminars we talked about emotional intelligence, knowing the difference. So, but in closing, I want you guys to really take a hard look at yourself. Look at how you really are emotionally, and look at where you're at with your feelings. Because sometimes we can get them crossed up, or whatever the case may be, and we can walk around here with these little chips on our shoulders and attitudes, and there's no reason for them. There is no reason for them. It's because you're halting yourself. And I'm going to say this in closing. Typically, most of the things that go wrong with us is a direct result of what goes on in our head.
And if we have to question what's in our head.
Yes.
Because
I'm telling you, sometimes we can cause our own issues. Really, we can. So I'm challenging you all to really take a hard look at yourself. Really look at that. That will help you tremendously. Any other comments, concerns, questions that you may have that that wasn't clear or we need more clarity on? Okay, good. Well, I sure appreciate the dialogue, ladies and gentlemen. We do this once a month to kind of whatever. Now, we won't do it next month. We got something else going on with the Church with the Child Impact. But we'll be back in June. And then our next topic of discussion will be accepting personal responsibility. Learning how that you need to be responsible for your own actions and or behaviors. Okay, so we'll talk about that, how to work on that process. Yes, sir.
When I was doing some of that research for the sermon, one young man said that he grew up with his mom, and one of the things he found was that he had to learn coping skills because he and his friends, they grew up as emotional men, because, not understanding how to really positively channel those feelings they had. So they went to the club, somebody stepped on them, and the same way their mom flew off the handle, they would fly off the handle because somebody stepped on their shoes, and then it ended up in a shootout and stuff. And he was actually complaining because he had been growing up in his household around only women, and he was saying to them that you moms got to do better. They have to know that if they're raising a young man, there are certain things that he needs to know. And it brought back to my mind something when the ombudsman, they were going through these volatile communities in Jamaica, and they were saying, hey, did you ever think about just talking to the guy from the other side to get his story? And the boy looked at him and said, we can do that? So there are lots of coping skills that people need in order to navigate this life, and the way females will handle things are going to be different from the way males will handle things, and they have to be groomed in a certain way. I know you were talking about men being macho and being raised macho, but in some ways we're built that way so that stuff runs off us, so we don't keep dragging it with us over and over and over. But there comes a time when we're going to have to face those demons and get them out.
Yeah, in closing, what happens is that the concept of nature versus nurture, God designed for children to have a father and a mother. That's what's going on in our society. We see more of the opposite. Most people, it is a treasure and a blessing to have both parents. I can tell you that from my own personal experience, having both of my parents, okay? So not saying you can't still do it without one, but God never designed it that way. He designed it for both. And because when you have both, it creates the balance. Because sometimes with my own children, I could be hard. My wife said, no, don't take that approach, because they ain't gonna get you nowhere. And he'd be like, then I had to settle down, be like, okay, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Because that's gonna actually flag up more danger. Then I have to be catching the Casey. I might send me on WLTX. Okay, so, but then also the opposite is also with men to females. So, because sometimes some females can trigger some stuff, and I have to be like, hey, whoa, pump the brakes. No, I don't think you might want to go there or do it like that. And she was like, yeah, that's right. So that's why God designed to have that balance. Because he knew that men, because we provided, whatever the case may be, we're going to do it, and they step out of line, oh, it's on. And women have to say, reel it back in. Let me explain why. Okay, I understand. And sometimes women get a little bit too nurturing. And I'm like, man, take the handcuff, take the pedals off, take the handcuffs off of them, and let them run. That's why God created the balances, because you got to have that. Because you get too much like this, it can be all whatever. You get too much, you way like this. So that's why they have the balance. It's nature versus nurture. And I think if we would follow that more, I think we would really have a better society. And our children will really have better role models that really do whatever, or trying to, relate on something else. And that's why it was designed that way. And we can get back to that point. Things will be a whole lot better. Everybody agree? All right. Home, you go ahead and close us out in prayer for us. Amen. Again, thank you folks for sticking with us here.